welcome everyone into the third day of this edition of EVConIndia. I, on behalf of Blue Circle, would like to take a few moments to thank all our esteemed partners for putting their shoulders to the event. Special thanks to our main sponsors, Log9 Materials and Hero Electric, knowledge partner AVERE and Marcel for creating the white paper, accelerator partner Huddle, and real estate partner GLL. It's been an absolute pleasure working with their teams and getting their valuable support. Also, a big shout out to all my team members for working all the hours to pull this off. Thank you also to our distinguished audience for joining us, most of whom are CEOs, CXOs, and senior leaders. Many of them are our members and are repeat visitors to our webinars. This is very encouraging and motivates us to provide even higher levels of dialogue. For those of you who are new with us today, India-based startup Blue Circle is the world's first sector-specific opportunity and knowledge exchange networking app for business leaders. It is somewhat like the sector-specific LinkedIn for senior leaders, a space to have meaningful conversations, connect with over 15,000 plus rapidly growing a community of like-minded leaders from India and across the globe, exchange high-quality curated content, and access business opportunities across 20 sectors, such as e-mobility, renewable energy, real estate, and many more. Those leaders among you who are interested, please do join us. Coming to today's discussion, it is a privilege and a pleasure to welcome Philippe Vangeel, our distinguished keynote speaker, who is handpicked because of the think input and the rich experience he brings in. With great technology and brilliant people, Philippe Vangeel found his way as a Secretary General in one of the fastest changing and growing technologies, e-mobility. In electronics by background, Philippe has always worked as a manager in the sector. Strong with 20 years of experience as an entrepreneur, he brought a practical outlook to the association that enabled it to seize the moment. His vision is to make AVERE a protagonist in the growth of the e-mobility sector. As part of his broader approach, he ensured that the entire e-mobility value chain would get visibility through AVERE. He made it the potential home of every player in the sector, from countries extracting the materials to build EVs, to vehicle manufacturers, charging point operators, and finally consumers. Now coming to the discussion will revolve around the topic, global impact of European policies on the EV industry. Now I request Philippe to please begin the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Gautam. Thank you for the introduction, and I'm happy to be here to give the insights what's going on really in Europe. I will start my presentation, and I hope it is all visible for you.
Yeah, it's visible.
Oh, okay, thank you. Here we go. We will indeed talk about the impact of European policies, but also, impact on the industry as such, and what does it mean on global level. So first, maybe a short explanation who AVERE is and where we come from. So we have been founded in the late 70s in really remarkable, and that was the years of the first oil crisis worldwide. So we had high oil prices, we had oil shortage, and our founders were mainly academics with a technical background who were sitting together and think, what alternative can we deliver? Can it be electric? Can it be a different way? And there was the association started. Of course, there is a big timeline of a lot of theory, a lot of tryouts, etc. But the big breakthrough came, of course, the lithium battery development. And luckily, we have the lithium battery, because if not, our smartphones would still have a battery of 5 or more kilos. So it's a success of many technologies that are depending on this. We are more industry-oriented today, because the industry is, of course, there as well. And we want to shape, together with policymakers also, that this industry can really be established and has a clear path to go. So what is key recently is the European Green Deal. You hear this Green Deal aspects also in other countries or parts of the world. And this is the way to go. So our vision is clearly, we always aim for 100% new zero-emission vehicles by 2030. And why 2030? Yeah, the goal is, keep in mind the Paris Agreement, that we should have by 2050 a reduced rate of temperature change in the world, and that we need to make that commitment. And if you want to end by 2050 by a cleaner world, you need to act at a certain way, because vehicles stay a long time on the road once they are produced. So decarbonize transport by 2050, you need to act pretty early. Of course, we have a steady automotive industry in Europe, and we want to, of course, keep that. Less risk competition going on. So where are we currently? We have from origin associations as a member, so they represent the different member states in Europe, but we also have direct industry members, and through to these associations we also have indirect members, because each association represents in each country an important role with industry players, but also with EV users. Some associations are only representing EV users, and this is important for us because we put the EV user actually very centric. And in that context, we are working with the industry to make e-mobility happening, but we are not working for the industry. So it's really the goal that is the target here. Now, where is the status? This explains actually the big challenges. We have quite a lot of internal combustion engines on the roads. Don't gonna go in detail here, but these need to be going on zero emission in the future. Now, one thing is also there, replacing all these passenger cars, for example, by an electric passenger car is not a solution either. So we see a mix of solutions. We also want to actually see reduced vehicles on the road. And yeah, then you talk about mass mobility as a service, get people not necessarily take the vehicle from point A to B as a primary choice. That there's also the need for alternatives for sure. Also on trucks level, we see too often empty trucks, half-filled trucks. Can we optimize this? So it's a broad aspect that brings a lot of things together. Things in that sense, it sounds a bit fake maybe. If we talk about these things, it's also data and establish a lot of data knowledge, and how we can optimize this, yeah, is key of success. So where are we now in Europe? So 2022, the numbers, half-year numbers are not in fully, but we see that the graph is really clear. It's exponential growth now. Most remarkable is that we had, if you look 5 years back, we had forecasts. How will it be? One certain moment, there will be a significant growth during the years upcoming, but it's going earlier, or it's doing better than we expected. So this is already a wake-up call, not only for the industry, but also for the policymakers, that people really want to have EVs, and that the demand is actually higher than the offer we get, and that we're doing better than any forecast from less than 5 years ago. Here we see a bit the tendency, this is the percentage. As 2022 is not finished, we will see it's definitely a higher EV sales share here. Good, it's growing. Is it good enough? No, definitely not. So why is the success there? Of course, it's thanks to the battery technology. If you look at the battery packs that were established in the cars from 10 years, the first generation EVs, well, we get a lot of more battery today, more kilometers, better energy development, we have better range, and also improved charging speed. This is key to success. Where we struggle today is the pricing, and we hope that the price would go down, but yeah, don't have to explain. There was a lot of things have been happening in the world which impacted this evolution. Nevertheless, I repeat, people are still want to have the EVs. Now, as already indicated, we also need charging infrastructure, but we may not forget, and now too many people are focused only on public charging. We need, don't forget that where there is electricity, you can charge your car. It's maybe not at the speed you want, but overnight, when you sleep, your car can be charged at home or at the office during the daytime that you're working. Now, here you see also the growth of the charge infrastructure, and it goes actually hand in hand with the growth of the e-mobility, the electric vehicles on the road. Now, it's a bit tricky because it's not well divided over all Europe. So here you see it by country, and you see that actually the Netherlands is doing best. It's the best class in Europe, close to 100,000 charging points in a relatively small country. Now, the countries are doing the best. There you see also the highest EV penetration. Now, there was also a question about these numbers. How many charging infrastructure do we need? How many public charging infrastructure do we need? And the question that we have been always in return is, yeah, but what is your decarbonization target? And that's what you see in the Netherlands. The Netherlands have a clear path. By 2030, they stop to sell internal combustion engines. And then they say, yeah, but by 2030, we know how many EVs we want to have on the road. And these people need to have the infrastructure. And that's why the Netherlands also have a clear plan to develop this charge infrastructure, because they know what need there will be by 2030. And it's successful. Then, what we may not forget is the complexity of charging infrastructure. It's quite different. And what we forgot in our picture here, actually in the middle, is the user. The user have to get the change habits. He should actually forget, if you take the example of a passenger car, it's still an object that brings you around, but you should forget completely the past and start over again. People's minds, it doesn't work, but the experience is there. But it's a quite different world with a lot of challenges, with a lot of complexity. Nevertheless, technology is there, it's feasible, it works. But we need more actors, and we need to take care of a lot of possibilities. And I don't gonna go in detail, we can discuss this later if you have any questions. But it's, yeah, the user should have the most smoothly experience, starting with understanding how is charging car, which speed, what is AC, what is DC, slow charging, fast charging, which standard there is, which kind of connectors there is, and how we can pay. So the role infrastructure is really important. And that's also translated now in the policies. And we see that accelerating toward a European policy that is addressing all these needs. I already touched it. The challenge that we see here now is interoperability. So if I travel from one country to another, it's not so difficult in Europe. We have a lot of small countries. It's not guaranteed that I can charge with the same card in another country. Price transparency is an issue. It's not always clearly how you will be invoiced when you charge a car. Roaming, maybe I have a good card, even in the same country, it doesn't work, and the charging infrastructure rollout. And on that rollout, there is a lot of issues. Issues or challenges. You have to see. The biggest one that we hear is the permitting. Am I allowed to build a charging infrastructure? And there you see that some countries have a really big administrative burden where it goes too slow. And too slow, that means that maybe the investment don't want to be made. If I use the example of Poland, it can take up to 2 years before you get the permit to build the charging infrastructure. This is far too long. The other question is the grid capacity. We have sufficient electricity, but it's not everywhere to find. And therefore, we also say Too often they want to replace petrol stations, or they want to add on the petrol station charging infrastructure. Is that a good choice? It makes sense, but if the electricity is not, the capacity of the electricity is not close by, you better look where capacity is there. Now, already mentioned European policies. A lot of things have been happening in the last years. With the new European Commission, there was an immediately launch of a European Green Deal and new climate law. We also had a launch for Fit for 55. It's a symbolic way, but 55 reduction of emissions by 2030 already. And now, yeah, the last one is, of course, Repower Europe. We are too depending on fossil fuels, definitely coming from Russia, where there's, of course, discussions that we don't want the gas anymore, neither the fossil fuels from Russia. So there is a restructuring, but this is, each aspect is accelerating indeed e-mobility. Now, everything is split in different policy files. Maybe once again, I don't want to go in detail because it's maybe too distractive. But you see there is a lot of aspects that are addressing a lot of elements. We have the battery regulation, means recycling obligations, traceability. So each battery that comes to Europe or is built in Europe, we want to trace as maximum as possible, because the raw materials are subject of recycling, and that's key. That's also key of the success of e-mobility. It's on the subject of recycling aspects. Alternative fuels infrastructure regulation, there we're going to address all these aspects through Europe about access on your charging infrastructure, how many there should be, quite a lot of aspects. You also see in the middle buildings directive, and you think, what do we have to do with buildings directive? Yeah, buildings means also the access to charging infrastructure. The right to plug is included there. So the goal is to have an obligation when a new building is set, and if it's private, public offices, etc., there should be charging infrastructure in place. Now, the key files, already mentioned the AVERE, and so we really want to have binding targets on the charging infrastructure. But the most and important one is actually the middle one for the moment, is the CO2 standards for cars and vans. So the 2030 phase out was proposed by the Commission, and there was a lot of skepticism that actually it should be accepted. So if you understand European policy, the Commission makes a proposal and it should be accepted by the Parliament, which happens. And the Council, all the member states also accepted it. There was a discussion if we should have e-fuels, yes or not. Parliament was fully agreed that we should go by 2035, fully phase out. Only the Council, so the member states, they asked for e-fuels. Now the e-fuels is a big discussion. How it is framed today, e-fuels means also no pollution at all. Can we replace all the fuels with e-fuels? Certainly not. If we want to do that, we don't eat tomorrow anymore. The planet has not the capacity to produce as many e-fuels. But the e-fuels definition, which is now on the table, actually doesn't exist. It does exist in test cases, but it doesn't exist in high production quota. And if it should come in high production quota, the forecast is that it actually will be very expensive. So is it necessary? Future will show out. Now, what is the industry thinking about all these aspects? We did end of last year. It's getting, of course, a bit outdated. We did a survey. What is going on? How are the European brands, the car makers? What is their plans? So you see that timeline here by 2035, definitely the European Commission, and you see the car brands when they actually go full electric. And you see that some are quite very progressive, and good examples are really already there by 2030, like a Volvo. They produce by 2030 only electric vehicles, full electric vehicles. Now, the key message of this survey actually is it's twofold. Actually, the car makers, when you hear, or the industry as such, they all find that e-mobility will be the main changer and the good solution to get to 2050 targets, which was indicated in the beginning. Now, the biggest main factor that made that commitment, they want clarity in policy. As long policymakers are having doubts, and should we do that, should we do this, it's difficult as an industry. How do we need to plan as an industry? And that is now clearly set from this summer, that we have a clear view from the European policymakers in the different, on the different levels, that 2035 will be definitely the target. So the industry has now a clear path to address. And industry is big. It's not about making the car, but also putting the charge infrastructure in place. And yeah, I can only foresee a brilliant future. Now, a bit about our own work. You need motor vehicles regulations. You need adaptive regulations because an electric vehicle has a different demand. So we are addressing this on UNEC level, United Nations level, but also on European level. We do also collaborations and also want to emerge you or to act in maybe, I'm not going to say that you have to do the same, but it's not about transport. It's a lot of other aspects. You have to step out the comfort zone because you need the energy, different kinds of energy. You need electricity, by preference, renewable energy. Solar industry, wind industry is a perfect match with electric vehicles. Already mentioned data, smart charging. That's the best way. If we all connect our car to the grid will collapse. But the technology exists, smart charging, based on data collection, based on data steering. So the data aspect is also there. So you see already, it's not classical transport anymore. It's about different energy sources and a different approach, how this all should collaborate. I also want to invite you to look at the World Electric Vehicle Journal. Many know it already. It's scientific, where you find really a lot of source of information, technical, but also policy-wise. And you see experience, what has been studied, what has been approached. We do every year also a symposium to attract new studies. Last one was now this year in Oslo. And yeah, if you see the success of this symposium, which is really going hand in hand with the success of e-mobility. And also there we want to bring the importance of these studies, because, you know, almost daily, you find on social media, in the press, studies that says, yeah, but an EV is not good because of this and this reason. We have to keep a big watcher on what's going on. So we need to debunk myths and raise the public awareness to combat these misconceptions. But we do have to do this on scientific-based knowledge. Just saying EV is better, yeah, but we really have to go in deep detail and get study-based references. So we are indeed entering a new world, where in the past question was, will e-mobility really happen? Can we manage this? Can we do this? Well, actually, the path is clearly there towards 2050, that e-mobility will be a main role in decarbonizing transport. And I want to conclude here and give some space for Q&A.
Thank you, Philippe. Such an enriching presentation. Thank you. I'll quickly move on to the Q&A session. The first questions come from Anjali. She's asking how the Market Design Directive encourages member states to introduce smart metering systems and using electricity for charging.
Um, well, it's a different pillar. We now we're on the energy side, on the electricity side, and indeed, the smart, what we call smart meters, are really rolling out. It's really individual by country, but if I look at my own country, each new connection is a smart meter, and they're replacing all the old meters by new ones. It's, of course, you don't do that at once. It's a plan of on several years, but this is definitely happening, and it goes so far that yeah, that connection will be used because it gives also a lot of insights what's going on the grid side, and with that smart metering, yeah, we can do a lot. And in the future, what actually the wish is, I talked about the Buildings Performance Directive. The wish is to have as many EVs connected as possible, because if you scale up to 1 million electric vehicles and going to 10 million electric vehicles, and we know by data that actually 95% of the time a vehicle is standing still, is not used, right? Standing while you're working, standing still is while you sleep. Most of the time it stands still. If you can connect them and you see an average battery capacity, it's more than a nuclear plant. Huh? And if you combine this smart charging and you do even to vehicle to grid, bi-directional charging, yeah, it's a brilliant future. But it's also answering the electricity demand question. So when we get criticized, yeah, but an electric vehicle puts so much stress on the grid, and actually it will give the solution on that.
Thank you. Andre, I hope the question got answered well as well. I'll move on to the next one by Rajan. He's asking, what is energy performance of the buildings directive for real estate players?
Well, I don't know all the details. I know the details, which is important for the e-mobility sector. It's a discussion which is going on. So it's each time the existing directive is there, and in the old one it says you should be preview cabling or already have the easiness to put the cables there to get your charge infrastructure there. Now they want to go to more an obligation. Does it make it more complex for a builder? Maybe not as such. Will it be maybe a higher cost? I would not overestimate it. Nevertheless, if you think more EVs on the road, people automatically will demand it. And in directive, it gives a bit too much flexibility. So we hope that it actually will not be a directive, but regulation, that it really obliges. And the more that people also will see that there is charge infrastructure present, the more confident it also will be to buy an EV. Because you don't, in the beginning, you think, yeah, but I don't see it. It's already small. Also on public fast charging, it's not always that big that you don't see it. That aspect is there as well.
Thank you. I'll move on to the last question, but I hope that more questions also keep coming from other people as well. The question is, what is Renewable Energy Directive? How does it help in moving away from crop-based biofuels such as palm oil to cleaner fuels?
The Renewable Energy Directive, it's a very complex one. It's also an ongoing consultation. So in the past, we had a factor which privileged indeed the electricity, which is actually the most efficient way to go, the most directive way to go. And yeah, what we see indeed is that those alternative fuels, biofuels, etc., are definitely not the good choice. It's like putting, yeah, if you want to develop that on a big scale, yeah, you decrease indeed the possibility to plant, to develop foods for what we need as well as a human being. So we have to make choices, and it's definitely heavily criticized. They say, yeah, but for certain niche markets, we need it. Well, maybe leave it to niche markets, but just avoid it and give each time the most privileged way, the most efficient way, put electricity first. And where you cannot electrify, then we start to talk again.
Thank you. So actually have one question though. From the since we're talking about global policies, how can developing nations or India learn from countries like Norway or any other Scandinavian country which has completely adopted e-mobility into their system?
Well, for me, the success is, and also the big success of Norway is they have established a policy and got stuck with it. It was developed already more than 10 years ago, and it's still in place. And that's a clear answer towards your citizens, to your inhabitants. Everybody who has to buy a new car knows that, yeah, there is no risk in 5 years that this will change. Of course, now we are a bit more comfortable situation because, yeah, in each dealership you find now a good offer of electric vehicles. When I started, you hardly had a very handful good offers of electric vehicles, and in less than 10 years, this have been, if I would say, skyrocketing. It's maybe exaggerated, but you find a really good offer now, and this helps, of course, as well. But a clear policy path is really key to success.
Thank you so much, Philippe. On this note, I just want to say such an insightful and engaging session. It was a privilege to hear you. Our guest and I have been hooked until the end and have taken up several nuggets. And also thank you to our leaders in the audience for joining us and for staying till the end and for always sharing excellent questions.
I'm going to leave you one key message, and it's just do it. There is absolutely no excuse to not to act. It's all possible.
Thank you so much. We'll surely put this across to all our members.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.